Okay, I think I think we are live right now. So,
All
hello
right.
everyone. Rajiv, great to have you. And for everyone that's listening, this live stream we are talking about Product Hunt, and we have a very special guest for that today, namely Rajiv, the CEO of Product Hunt. We want to talk about what makes a launch on Product Hunt great, share some do's and don'ts, get some misconceptions out of the way. But first of all, Rajiv, thank you so much for joining and sharing your wisdom with us.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. I'm very excited with what's happening with the Fastgen Hackathon, and it's good to be talking to you again, Mike. We go way back to Y Combinator Summer 19, where my previous startup and Mike's previous startup were in the same batch. So it's great to be here.
A pleasure to have you. And maybe give us like just a couple sentences of your own background. You just alluded to it, but what led you to now being the CEO of Procter? Just like in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, I, I've mentioned this before, but Product Hunt changed my life. It's uh, kind of looking at Product Hunt in the early days, like 2013, 2014, was a big inspiration for me and two friends to start a company. And we launched many things on Product Hunt, crypto projects. We eventually launched a virtual office for remote teams, which was my last company, and we had a great ride. And one thing led to another, and I got introduced to Ryan Hoover, the founder, as he was one of our angel investors. And um, I won't go through in excruciating detail, but conversations led to me being here, and I'm a few months in, and just super excited to uh, see what's in store for Product Hunt's next chapter.
Well, I'm very excited about it as well. I think it was a very, very good decision to get you on board. But I will stop showering you with compliments. Let's talk a little bit about Product Hunt itself. And almost everyone who listens will probably know what it is, but how would you describe the essence of Product Hunt to someone out there who is aware of like software and stuff? But what is it for you?
It's a community of makers and product enthusiasts, and the most essential form it takes is it's a daily leaderboard of new startups that are launching and new projects that are launching. And people upvote it, they comment. You can talk to the makers because the makers are launching these products. And then after that you can find these products in different categories on the site. And uh, there's a lot more to it than that, but at its core, it's a daily leaderboard of new startups.
Got it. And let's start with the leaderboard and the launches and get that out of the way. And then I would like to take some time to talk about like the next steps and the next chapter and what's coming afterwards as well. So maybe let's just start with the most obvious questions. Let's talk about a couple of common rules for a good, successful Product Hunt launch. What would you say makes a just like a good launch at first?
Well, let me take a step back and talk about how to think about a launch. And
Yes,
this is
that's
probably
even better.
familiar to you, but
Yeah.
um, you know, I think about, so when you're building a new product, you're trying to find out whether people want what you're building, whether you're making a promise to them. I try to think about it as promise market fit, like, and then you have to deliver on
Mm.
that with the product as well. But the one of the things that you're really testing with a product hunt launch is that promise market fit. And the way I think about it is like unfurling a sail, and then if you're on a sailboat, like unfurling a sail and then seeing if there's that gust of wind that blows it, like catching that gust of wind. So there are two pieces to that. Like one is you have to do some work to unfurl the sail, and that's like describing your product well, having good assets, like putting the right energy behind a product hunt launch, and then the gust of wind is allowing for the community to really take up your product. And when a product hunt launch goes really well, it's not necessarily about getting number one. It's really about getting that influx of highly engaged, highly curious people who will use your product, give you feedback, and help pull you to that next level.
Yes, I think that's a very important distinction as well. So We talked about that earlier, but we did 2 product hunt launches, one for Alasa, one for Fastgen. We'll do another big product hunt launch early next year once we have like the new version of Fastgen. But we always get the question, like, how do you get number like top 3? How do you get this? And as you just try to frame it, it's a leaderboard, so it's like it's human nature, like especially for like people who like to just want to place highly. But I think taking a step back and thinking about the actual objective being getting new users to try out your product and learn about your product and communicate with you, like I think that's a very good goal to have. But even for that, you should follow some rules, right? Because if you don't get any attention and any upvotes whatsoever, that's, I assume, either a sign that no one wants your product, which could be a thing, right? Sometimes you launch things that like no one really wants to use, which is good to learn early on. But on the other hand, it could also just be a good product with a bad launch. So talk a little bit about like what is just like a gold standard or something that should be included, that you should focus on in terms of just the assets, the text. What is it that makes like a decent launch without looking at the like outcome for now?
Yeah. So I think one thing is a really, really crisp tagline. And it's not an easy thing to that tagline, that positioning statement, how you describe your product in 50 characters. That's not an easy thing to come up with. I think you probably remember in YC, the first question at each group office hours is often, what are you building? And then you describe it, and then the founders around you will often tell you, yeah, I didn't understand that at all. And that's such a powerful moment because it may make sense in your head, but when you test it with other people, it may not make sense. So I would definitely put a lot of energy into that. Like try to really capture what you're launching, like what promise you're making to users, and test it. The 2 common failure modes I see are, and I'm probably going to be writing a lot more on this in the future, but the 2 common failure modes I see are, as builders, we're afraid that what we're building is too small. So we try to make it bigger, we try to make it better. We add like universal platform and other type language, and you lose what it is. You make it confusing. So that's one common failure mode. And then the other common failure mode I see is maybe not just other types of making it confusing. So not using, people will use jargon that out of context doesn't really make any sense. And that's where testing can really go a long way. Or actually another failure mode is like you've built a lot of features, but really there's only one feature that is the key differentiating feature. And maybe people bury that, or they don't understand what's unique about the product. And that's something, again, that like telling it to a friend, maybe running it by some people who don't exactly know what you're building can really, really help. So crisp tagline, good visual assets, like show off what you're building, do a video. It doesn't need to be high production. It can be a loom of you walking through the product, like that. And then the maker comment, like where you really share with the community, like, what did you build and why? And a little bit behind the scenes. The community really likes to hear from you, like what was behind this? What motivated you to build this? Why you? Let's see, there are a couple areas I wouldn't spend as much time. Maybe that's also helpful too.
Yeah, of course.
Talk about. So one is, don't stress about the hunter. So I was looking through the data, and about 60% of the number 1 posts did not have, a top hunter. It's nice, but there are other ways to get kind of social proof. Like you could have an early customer hunt it, or maybe an investor, or maybe you just hunt it yourself because it's really cool when the maker hunts it. So it's definitely not necessary to have one of the top hunters hunt your product. Another thing, this is a really small thing, but the animated GIF of the logo, that can cost a lot of design time, and honestly, it doesn't really play until you hover over it, and there's nothing in the data that suggests it's at all linked to hunts doing better.
Got it. You're
So I
definitely
wouldn't
not
stress
talking
over
to
that.
someone who put a lot of time in their animation for their last product hunt launch. So
Hey, I did it. I've done it too. We've all
yeah,
done it.
yeah. Let me actually
Yeah,
comment on some of the things that you mentioned, because I find them very interesting, and some of them we've also tried to follow pretty closely. I think the first three were good tagline, make it clear, like not only the tagline, like specific and clear, but also the content around it, and then
yeah,
also try to understand what is the key differentiator. So those are things that are not necessarily only related to your launch, right? They are very important for you as a
yes,
business overall. So I think what you're saying to people is, before you think about the launch, think about the actual product and the actual like product market fit. How do you want to position yourself? And this is why you
yes,
can test it that well, right? You can test it with your potential users. You can test it even like different taglines on your website or in conversations. And I think this is a very good first point. Like the very first thing you need to figure out is not even product hunt related, it's product related. So that's
and
apparently
positioning.
exactly product and positioning related. So this is apparently where you should start. Like think about your positioning, test it out, and maybe don't test it out for the first time when you launch, because then you might be disappointed with the actual results. So that's the first thing that I'm getting. Um, the second thing was about visuals, and this is a question that I get every now and then, like the screenshots versus the videos, and then especially should it be product screenshots? Should it be like product screenshots embedded into like the other branding? It doesn't really matter as long as it's clean. And then also the video specifically, should it be a tutorial? Should it be an explanation? Do you have any more input on the visual assets? Because people seem to be spending a lot of time on them sometimes as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's think about what tells the story of your product. And it depends on the product category. So, for example, if you're making productivity software, you got to show the product off, right? Like you got to show off the user interface. If
Mm-hmm.
you're making more, maybe more enterprise software, maybe it's most important to like show you understand the problem you're solving and like break down the problem you're solving. And the exact interface isn't as critical. Um, but generally for most products launched on Product Hunt, you want to show off the interface to some degree because people want to know like, hey, does this look good? Does it feel good? Like, have you put thought in and craft into this? And like show that off. Like most of the one failure mode I see a lot is you put so much thought. The maker will put so much thought and craft into what they're making. You know, they'll be user testing it. They'll go through a lot of design cycles, and then they don't necessarily show that off in the assets. Um, and it, you know, you can tell when you see something that has some real love put behind it and some real thought put behind it. So yeah, think about how to show that off.
Yes, that makes sense to me. The other thing that you mentioned is the maker being part of it, right? Because you
Yeah,
don't really have that often when you discover a product. And that's one thing that's special about Product Hunt, right? You usually have the makers involved. Either they hunted themselves, they plan it, and they are in the comments. So one of the things that I heard some other like community builder mention is you need to make the hive mind happy, and the hive mind is happy when it gets answers to the questions that are being asked. So if you actually launch on Product Hunt, make sure that you answer the questions, that you don't deflect also sometimes. And oh, by the way, that's advice that I got and that I try to follow. And now you can tell me whether
mm-hmm.
that's actually true. But I think just being in the comments, being understanding, answering, and just being active usually is a sign to the, like, let's call it hive mind, or like, let's just call it the broader community, that things are
Yeah,
going well and that the makers care. Is there any, like, is that correct? And if so, would you add on top of that like any specific things that you can do after you've already clicked we have launched?
absolutely. I think engaging in the comments is really, really important. It's something that the community loves, and it's something that's really special about the Product Hunt community. They're not just looking to say like, yes, I want this, or no, I don't want this. They're looking to understand like, you know, why is this built this way? They may not always, you know, they may not always agree with how you've built something, but that's the nature of early stage products. Like you wouldn't be launching on Product Hunt if it were the same thing that's been there before. So it's like if you're launching on Product Hunt, it's awesome that you're launching something new, and the community wants to like understand that. And one of the ways they understand that is by asking questions. So I think the best launches, the makers are right there in the comments, maybe all of the makers, answering different types of questions. And, they don't get defensive. They just ask more questions and they use that to create a conversation between the makers and the community members. And sometimes really interesting things come out of that conversation. I know when we launched Tandem, some of the comments or questions in the conversation inspired some feature ideas like in the next few months. So that could be a really, really powerful way to engage with the community.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely had that happen as well. And the good thing about Product Hunt, at least my perception is always they want to understand, they ask questions, they ask about how this is different. But contrary to some other like websites that are out there, it's still usually a very positive community. It's always lifting each other up and not, as you sometimes find on the internet, just trying to destroy everything they're seeing. So I've always perceived Product Hunt as being a very like positively minded community that tries to like understand and sometimes maybe ask a critical question, but always in the sense of lifting each other up. And I really like that about Product Hunt.
Yeah, making things is can be a bit of a lonely endeavor, and it's difficult to put it out there. Like you've probably seen what I've seen, where a really common failure mode in early stage builders and founders is they build and they build and they build and they don't launch because I get it. I've done it too, right? Because it's really scary to think that the world doesn't want what you're building when it's so great in your mind. But actually, you need to launch it and get feedback and iterate and improve from there. And that's what I think the Product Hunt community understands understands how that the people who are launching are putting themselves out there for better or for worse, and they're getting feedback. And I love how supportive the community is.
Yes, it's definitely a big part of it. Let's talk a little bit about misconceptions, or maybe not even misconceptions, but questions that we tend to get every now and then, and that you probably get like, I don't know how many times now. And then you can just like tell us whether it's true or not. So first question, can send people direct links to their launches, or is that bad for the algorithm?
You can send people direct links to your launch. We ask that you ask them to support, don't directly ask for votes.
Yes.
But yes, you can send people direct links to your launch.
Great. That's first. The second one was, is it bad to pre-schedule launches? I get that question quite a bit as well.
It's not bad. You should think about it as mandatory. Pre-schedule your launches. Launch them at 12:01 a.m. so you get the maximum time. We actually may make it much more difficult to not schedule your launches because when you launch at say 8 a.m. or 5 a.m. Pacific, you lose that first part of the day. Think of it, going back to the sailboat analogy, as you're not unfurling the sail fully. So you don't give that full chance for the community to take up your product and ask questions and embrace it. So I would say, unless you have a really hard embargo, or even then, like some reason why you can't launch at midnight, absolutely schedule your launch at least a day in advance. You can schedule the launch, and then you can still edit it in the launch submission flow.
Yeah, I've done that. That's one of the advantages of our European friends, because they can just get up at 9 a.m. and then launch right on time. But yeah, like I remember our first Product Hunt launch back in the day. We were in California. It was an all-nighter. We launched at midnight, and then we were just awake and didn't really sleep because we wanted to like answer all the comments. I don't think everyone has to be that extreme. But yeah, pre-scheduling apparently seems to be like a very good thing to do. And then the other question, that's probably one of the most asked questions. I don't even know whether there's a good answer, especially from your perspective, because you have like other incentives. But what day should people launch on? Do you know, like you probably get that a lot, right? What's the best day to launch on Product Hunt? And I assume every day is a good day. But like how would you like to maybe like get that question out of the way and like refocus on something else?
It's a good question. I mean, I think actually my perspective being on this side is similar to my perspective being on the other side launching things, where
Mm-hmm.
the weekends are a little quieter and the weekdays are a bit more active.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a trade-off. There's more traffic on weekdays, but it's more competitive. So there's always a little bit of a trade-off. The one thing that is certain is like weekends are a little bit quieter, which is kind of cool because then you get some more unusual products,
Mm-hmm.
happening
Yeah.
on the weekends. But definitely the weekdays. I haven't looked at the data on like what the latest um, distribution is during
Mm.
the day, like during the weekdays. I know
Yeah.
it tends to shift because there's kind of like a game theory that happens
Yeah.
where people observe some days are more competitive than others, and then they shift their launches, and it's always shifting. Um, but I would say there's no bad day to launch.
That's exactly what I would have guessed you would say. And this is literally also what I tend to say and what I hear from like other people who are like even like more active on Product Hunt and launch more regularly. Weekends are a bit less competitive, but you usually get a little less traction as well. So like you might rank a bit higher, but not as many people are looking at it. Versus weekdays is like there's more other stuff launching, but at the same time you also get more eyeballs often. So
Mhm.
as you said, bit of a trade-off. But I definitely had to bring that in because I get that question a lot. Then I also am not sure how you can answer this, but do all upvotes count the same? I get that question quite a bit as well. Or is it like some kind of super upvote? What about new accounts? Like these kinds of things.
I can't answer that question,
That's what I
but
thought.
I can say like in general, I think people know this already, but
Hmm.
don't buy votes. Like, don't incentivize people to upvote.
Yes.
It will, it'll penalize you. You may get taken down. Just play
Yeah.
play fair.
That would have been actually my next question because there like whenever you have something like a leaderboard or actually every time where the incentive is to potentially like either place highly or like get some eyeballs on you, you will always have offers around optimizing it, right? So you have
Yeah.
agencies. I don't know whether I would call them agencies, but like service providers who say, well, we will place you highly on Product Hunt. And I always tell people to avoid that because it's just artificial inflation, and usually these launches like that's my just my outside perspective, and I would like to hear your perspective. But it's usually sometimes it's very easy even for me to spot like when someone like used like some kind of like purchased external driver for their votes or not. But I always tell people definitely stay away from that. Focus on your own launch. But like, what are you telling people that are thinking about potentially working with an agency? And sometimes they don't even like say we buy votes, but they say we will place you in the top three and like don't mention directly. So what is your message to these people?
Don't do it. It's very like your post may very well be taken down, and it's certainly going to be penalized. And if there, it's difficult because we can't control all of the DMs that some of these agencies send.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, um, without going too much into what's happening behind the scenes, these agencies are not effective and generally harmful.
Yes. That's also my outside perception, but interesting to hear it from you as well. So other than not buying votes and not being clear, like is there any other things that you should actively avoid? Like not talking about optimization. You shouldn't buy votes. You shouldn't directly ask people for upvotes. You can always ask for support. You could even send it to your friends, to your community. I assume you even want the communities to be on Product Hunt, right? It's great for you to get more excited builders on there. But what are other things that people might be, where you might want to say, okay, you should avoid doing this overall on Product Hunt?
Hmm. Avoid. Let me think. I mean, one thing we see sometimes is kind of keyword stuffing, like trying to put a bunch of keywords into your tagline and product title. And that not only does it make your tagline more confusing, And it doesn't really help because it's not like there's an algorithm reading your keywords, right? These are people. And if you stuff
Yeah.
a bunch of jargon in there, it's not going to help. Um, but yeah, it's just not a good approach in general.
Got it. Optimize for the human community members and not for a
Yeah.
potential algorithm that doesn't even really look at it that much.
Yeah,
Okay.
this isn't Google. This is like a
Yeah.
community of people who are really interested in products and genuinely want to know what you're building. Um, you know, there's something you've probably done a lot of mock interviews for YC,
Yes.
right? And I think my number one piece of advice, the thing that helped me is try and say the most helpful thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like when you're launching on Product Hunt, with everything, with the assets, with the tagline, with the maker comment, this is an audience that genuinely wants to understand what you're building. Try and say the most helpful thing.
Got it. So I think when I try to summarize what you're saying about like product hunt and launches is like clarity is super important. Being clear,
Yeah.
which is also like a YC like mantra, but like be clear, be direct, and make sure that you focus on what differentiates you to some degree, right? So that you can be more precise. So these things seem to be important, and then make sure to like have some decent visuals, but don't stress too much over it, and always focus a little on the actual essence of the product. And if you can then sprinkle some personality on top of it with your maker comment and your personal journey and why you are a good person or like a good team to build this, I think then, if I understand you correctly, you're on a good way. And don't
Yes.
stress too much over who hunts it. Don't stress too much about the specific day. It might have an impact, but then maybe OpenAI releases GPT-5 on the same day, and your
Yeah.
people will focus on something else. So there's always something out of your control. Try to control what you can control, and then just make it human optimized and maker optimized. So think about it from the perspective of someone that looks at the products. And that's often you yourself, right? I am on product
Mm-hmm.
hunt every now and then.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get too distracted. I have to, okay, no, like I have to get back to work. But yeah, I'm scrolling through product hunt. And what I look for is exactly what you said. Like, I want to understand the product. I like it if there's like some nice visual, if there's a video that shows it and these kinds of things. So I think we've talked about some of these things. Are there any other misconceptions that you want to get out of the way before I want to ask one or two last questions about where you see product hunt going and what is in store for the future? Anything that we haven't touched?
Nothing that we haven't touched. I just added an extra layer of if you're thinking about how to write the maker comment or how to describe the product, just ask yourself, how would you describe this to a friend? That's always a good thing to come back to.
Got it. And this is also something you can test, right? You can literally write it, send it to a friend, see, hey, do you understand what I'm saying here? Or have at least someone proofread it to some degree. Okay, then you alluded to it a little bit in the beginning, and I don't know how much you can share about it today, but right now, Product Hunt, it's a leaderboard for product launches. You have the reviews behind it that you can like have on an ongoing basis. There's like a little bit more like interaction, like even after the launch, afterwards. You can even also put ads on Product Hunt, right? If you are in the fortunate position that you have money, either like venture money, you're making money, and you want to target the specific community, you can like post ads in different forms. But like, what else is there in store? Is there anything that would like to focus on that's coming, or anything that not enough people know about Product Hunt that you would like to get out?
Yeah. They're kind of there are two things on Product Hunt that are quite interesting and they're growing.
Mm-hmm.
And we may do some things to amplify or accelerate them in the future. One is your product hub. So when you launch, you create a launch post, but then also it's connected to a product hub, which is like it's like a page for your product. And as you do multiple launches, those launches add to your launch hub. You can see reviews. Sometimes people will leave pro tips, and it starts to build this profile of your company, of your product. So check out your product hub. Just see what's going on there. Make sure all the assets are good. That's starting, with a lot of companies starting to launch multiple times on Product Hunt. like you all have launched multiple times. These product hubs are starting to become really, really interesting. It's the more persistent way you engage with the community. The second thing is there's an interesting part of your profile where you show what products you're using, like what products are in your stack, not just the things that you found interesting or upvoted or made and launched, but what products do you actually use. And one of the things we've noticed is, although it's a little buried in the site right now, people have been really putting some interesting things in their stack. And when you look at especially another maker's stack, it's fascinating to see like what they're using. So that's, I don't want to share too much, but that's something we may be doubling down on in the future.
Yeah, I do like that thought a lot, honestly, because I like every week, probably at least once, I'm asking some of my friends, hey, what are you using for this? What are you using for that? So I think like publicly sharing that a bit more, and some people put it on their blog or something. That's an interesting idea. And I've peeked into some of it on Product Hunt. Do you have like 2 or 3 more minutes? Because I just saw that there's 1 or 2 questions that came in.
Let's do it.
So everyone who has questions, put them in the comments on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching. The first one that I already got is, what was your favorite or most unique launch you've seen on Product Hunt?
Oh man, this is so hard because it's like different every week. It's different every day even. I will say this is a small one, but I really liked Cloaked a few weeks ago, which lets you create phone numbers and email addresses to protect your privacy. And the founder posted his phone number in the comments, like, text me, what do you think? It was cool. And I texted him. I created one and like texted him. It was a cool launch. But it's different. It's different every week.
Yeah. I think this is a difficult question to just like fully answer, I assume, especially if you see so many launches. Another question that I got is like, in terms of your experience from like being on the one side of Product Hunt and then switching to the actual like behind the scenes side of Product Hunt, what has surprised you the most about the transition, or something that was unexpected?
Yeah. When you're on the outside, when I was on the outside, I love Product Hunt. I have so much gratitude toward it. But there was definitely a little bit of this tension I felt with the team where I wasn't sure what the team's intentions were. Being on the inside, I could say like several people on the team have launched things on Product Hunt. They're makers, they're from the community. I think one of the things that surprised me in a good way was just how much the team bleeds Product Hunt. They like, if I were to represent the team, talking to all the makers, like, we love you all. We're trying to do our absolute best. And yeah.
Got it. That makes sense. So even more appreciation for some parts of that. One question that we kind of touched on a little earlier, but I still got it here. What is planned? Like, what do you think about? Like, I think the exact question is, what is planned for Procter in the next years? But specifically, how you see it changing in the future, and what's like the longer term vision? So if you zoom out a bit more, maybe even than we already did.
Yeah. I mean, I think zooming way out, building like, I guess the 2 things. The products we use are building things is difficult. As you and I know, building things and putting them out there is difficult, and it's also the way the future gets built. And the people who are making the products that we use, they're everywhere. They're all around the world. They're from all walks of life. They're indie makers, venture funded startups, the whole thing. And there's this like fundamental need for to create more community, more connection, more of a connection between the people who are making things and the people who are enthusiastic, like the early adopters. that like fundamental essence of Product Hunt, I think um, there's just a lot. There's still a lot to explore there.
Yeah.
So I think, maybe that sounds. Hopefully that sounds pretty familiar to everybody, but
That
I know
is
it's not very
funny
specific.
because the next question that I have right here, and I think it's the last or penultimate one at least, is hey, I'm a maker. I want to talk to other makers. I'm a bit lonely. Where do these people
Yeah.
hang out? I paraphrased it a little, but like the I'm a bit lonely is literal part of the question. So,
Yeah.
is there any place where people who also hang out on Product Hunt hang out? Is there any kind of like central place where you can like chat, meet other people, other than like in-person meetups? Maybe like, is there a digital space? Are there like meetups? What would you say are the options there?
That is a thing we're going to be exploring, like especially on the digital side. We haven't done much recently with the digital side. We haven't done much in the in-person side either, and we're changing that. I think messaging already went out in the newsletter, but for those of you who are listening, if anybody's in New York, uh, next week on the 12th, we'll be having a meetup. And let's see, what's the best way? Well, I'm sure we'll be contacting you. You'll probably see something in email, but if not, you can message the folks at Fastgen and we'll give you all the details. But we're going to be exploring different ways of bringing people together, over the coming months. So
Nice.
I'm
I
I'm
love that.
I'm very excited that whoever it was asked that question.
Yes.
Yes, it's on my mind,
Good.
and it's
I'm
happening.
also happy to co-host the next New York event or the Berlin event, depending on what you want to do. Like always
This
happy to bring
this may
other
also be in the
builders together.
cards.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay. I think these were all the questions that we had. Thanks everyone for listening in. Everyone who watches this later, appreciate you as well. Rajiv, thank you so much for being here and answering all these questions. I think it's great to just get some of these misconceptions out of the way and have people refocus on what actually matters, which is building great products, launching them to the world. And then I really like this like community that you bring up over and over again, just because I think that this is one of the most powerful things potentially, just like combine the uniqueness and the power of all these people who create something from nothing, because that's what it usually is. And yeah, so I'm digressing a bit too much. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure, and have a good rest of your week.